Can you all see this?
Mhm.
Okay. So we'll go over some introductions and housekeeping rules, and then we're going to cover working with legal, risk, and other stakeholders in procurement. And then we'll save some time for some current issues and then some closing remarks and reminders. So let's do our introductions. I did put the prompt in the chat as well, so I'll kick us off. I'm Samantha Miller with Link Transit. I'm the contracts and procurement specialist, but a team of one. So if any of this seems a little more specific to that situation, just keep that in mind. And then I've been in procurement for just over 4 years now. And I think my favorite template has been, I came up with this question. I didn't have anything ready. Let's go with my notice to proceed template is what I used as the basis of every other template that I've created. So I'll hand this one over to Ginny. Do you want to cover the questions here?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second bi-monthly Emerging Professional. My name is Jenny Justiniano. I'm currently the chapter president, formerly the co-chair of this Emerging Professional, and so happy to pass the baton to Kristen and Melissa. And the agency I represent is King County International Airport, one of many departments at the King County here in Seattle. And I am a lead contract specialist, and I lead pretty much the A&E construction and goods and services team. Years in procurement, I'm thinking around getting to 22 years. Favorite template. So Sam, you said notice to proceed, huh?
Yes.
Um, for
You
me,
can pick anything. It could be a notice to
yeah,
proceed.
that's true. It could be a notice to proceed. Yeah, but we definitely love the notice to proceed because that means work will get started finally. But I think it's more of since I do all lines of business for A&E, it's more of just reminding our consultants it's time to submit their annual rates for review. But I think for the goods and services, there's not really a familiar template, but it's more of like just corresponding with vendors to kind of move it along when it comes to them providing a quote or an estimate and whatever the next step is. It's always kind of the kickoff tone and how to get them there and then finally to do the NTP. I will
Nice.
pass the ball to Kristen.
Hello, my name is Kristen Boone, and I work for King County as well as a contract specialist. But I haven't been here quite as long as Ginny, but I have been in procurement for probably over 15 years now. And I would say my favorite template was at my previous agency, we did a piggyback template checklist, and it was my favorite because of the collaboration that was involved with it, like everybody having a ton of research and impact and, decisions in it, and then actually getting to see it be utilized. That would make it my favorite. Um, and I will go ahead and pass to Melissa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Irvin, and I'm with the City of Ridgefield. I am the sole procurement coordinator here with the city. I have been with the city on the public side for about 4.5 years, or a little over 4.5 years. And then private side, I was doing procurement for about 5.5 years. So I guess 9-ish years total in both sectors. Oh, this is a great question. I would probably say I really like our award letter template, kind of getting started, selecting the consultant or contractor for a project, and then it has links to like our ACH form and some of the other requirements for documentation that we need. So it kind of the sets the stage for what we need from our different vendors. So yeah, I personally really like it. Let's see here. I will pass the baton to, let's do Heidi.
Hey, afternoon, everyone. Heidi Johnson from the city of Redmond. I have 12 plus years in procurement, but just over 2 years here at the city. And I mean, we do have a lot of templates, but I guess like my favorite go-to ones is I guess you kind of already said like the ward letters, but I just have like all of my email templates just on a OneNote folder where I can like copy paste for everything, and those just, help streamline everything. Oh, and I'm gonna pass it off. Sorry. Um, let's go to Linda.
Thanks, Heidi. Linda Hodgson. I was with the Department of Social and Health Services for the state of Washington, and I was the agency contracts training manager. Retired a couple years ago, but I had 17 years in public procurement, probably about 10 or 15 before that in the private sector. And my favorite template, I think, of all time was the DSHS solicitation template. It kind of really got you off to a fast start, and also, gave you the opportunity, depending on what the services were or whatever, to modify things if you had to. But there were certain areas that you weren't supposed to, so that was very helpful too. So let's see, I'll pass it to Stacia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacia Wasmond. I am at the Liquor and Cannabis Board. I've been here for almost 3 years, and before that, I was at DES for 2 years working on state contracts. I we're redoing all of our templates because we went almost a full year of not having a manager, and so now we have a manager again, and she's kind of redoing everything for us, and we're working with our AGs. But I would say all of my solicitation templates for my like sourcing team they're probably my favorite ones because I made them and brought them over from DES and know they're compliant and all that. So they're kind of my go-tos. Let's see, where's my list of people? Michelle? Pass it to Michelle. Oh, there's two Michelles. Is someone talking? Michelle Oshweri.
It's okay. It's a tricky one. I'm with
Tried.
Benton. It's okay. I'm with Benton PUD. I've been working here as the manager of procurement for 17 years now. And previous to that, I was at Columbia Basin College, where I worked there for 30 years. And so I've been in the procurement world for a bit of time and through a few changes and different steps on the way. I've had the opportunity to work through several legislature changes and things like that. And so it's impacted a lot of how we've written things over the years. And it's funny to see how the pendulum has swung from one way to another during those times. But currently working on all of the changes that are impacting us currently and rewriting and redoing all of our templates for our contracting for services and our contracting for large material buys and long-term year contracts. So real busy right now, just like to hear what other people are using for template formatting. It's pretty antiquated around here. I haven't ever had a lot of time to work on refreshing that since I've been here because there was a lot of other improvements that had to happen. We went into a electronic ordering process, and some of those policies and procedures had to be implemented. So big changes had happened, and it took time to get to this point to do the contracting stuff. So this is a great opportunity. Have we heard from Heidi Johnson?
Yeah, I already went.
Okay.
I can pop in because the other Michelle.
Okay, I just can't tell from the list. So sorry.
It's okay. And I need to go back out to what we're, So my name is Michelle O'Day. I work for the City of Bellevue. I'm procurement specialist. I've been in procurement not all that long, I guess 4 years or so. Done other roles at the City of Bellevue prior to that. And in terms of templates, I'm not sure I have a favorite template. We are working, it's always a work in progress. We're revamping and redoing all the time. But the contract templates, it's nice. They're nice to have out there. And someone else needs to pop on because I'm not sure who has not gone either.
I'll pop on. I haven't gone yet. Sarah Hubert, Portiscadget. I am the Grants and Contracts Manager. I've been doing procurement for about 5.5 years. And my favorite template is the Notice of Final Completion because the project is done. And then Natalie was on here, but it looks like she might have fallen off. She said she was having problems. So I think we've hit everyone.
All right. Thank you. So I do want to be very cognizant of time. My goal is to have this be about 30 minutes long and save us some protected 15 minutes to cover any questions that we might not want in the recording or any specifics at the end like we usually have. So as a reminder, this is a safe space for everyone. You're encouraged to participate. Please keep your cameras on when possible and then mute when you're not speaking. Since I can't see you guys, it's actually helpful, instead of raising your hand to talk, if you just unmute and interrupt me, I'm okay with that. We're limited to an hour, and I'll make sure that we have that protected space at the end for any specifics. And let's just respect everybody's point of view and ask questions. So today we're going to cover working with legal, risk, and other stakeholders as procurement professionals. We're really going to focus on strengthening controls, enhancing compliance, and driving organizational resilience. So it sounds like we've got a lot of experience in the room today in our emerging professionals group. So this image on the right shouldn't be a foreign concept for you as the procurement life cycle. I wanted to add some color in here because we're going to be pretty text heavy today. But we're going to cover procurement's audit role, how to collaborate with legal and risk and things to consider during that, documentation and retention best practices, some common audit findings, building stronger controls, and then cross-functional alignment. So us as procurement professionals, we're going to sit at the intersection of organizational risk management, legal compliance, financial stewardship, and supplier governance. So we have our fingers in all of these pies, and we're the only position that does get to see and oversee so many things. Another reminder for us all, I think it's easier said than done, but you shouldn't have to feel worried or threatened by internal and external audits because they can help us identify opportunities where we can strengthen our processes, improve our accountability, elevate our strategic value, and also it's very validating and it can confirm your controls that you already have in place. So what do I'm reading the next slide on my presenters. So procurement role in audits is providing documentation for sourcing, contracting, and supplier decisions. We are demonstrating policy adherence and control effectiveness. We're supporting the auditors with process walkthroughs, identifying gaps, control failures, or inconsistencies, and not only identifying, but one step further, documenting, and hopefully documenting that before it's pointed out by auditors, and partnering on corrective action plans and remediation timelines. So auditors typically examine our sourcing methodology and justification, which should be documented so we can remember a year or months or years down the road, contract lifecycle controls, supplier onboarding and due diligence, our segregation of duties. They're really focused heavily on approvals, thresholds, and delegation of authority, record retention, and documentation completeness. So I think we're going to be, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I just interrupt for a minute?
Yes.
One of the things, now I worked in the Central Contracts and Legal Services Division at DSHS, and my role was training. And since we weren't the contract managers, we didn't always have all of these pieces in our audits. However, the folks out in the field and those contract managers typically did. One of the things that the central contracts office had to do was to make sure that our auditors understood what procurement did. And so every time we really, really pushed to have the auditors sit through our classes and to get their feet underneath them as well. And so when they did go out into the field and do those audits, they understood what they were looking for. And that really, really helped. So I think maybe we can add a line here, make sure that your auditors understand what they're doing and what your policies are and what the rules that you have to live by. So.
That's a really good component to point out, Linda, and a really good idea. I had never thought to think of putting an auditor in through our training. It was really helpful. Thank you. So overall, they're looking for consistency, documentation, evidence of control effectiveness, and then if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Very important to remember. Working with legal. So legal ensures contract enforceability, compliance, and that we're properly mitigating risk. Procurement ensures commercial value, supplier performance, and operational alignment. So our key collaboration points are going to be contract drafting and negotiation, terms and conditions risk review, dispute resolution, and regulatory compliance. Another example that I didn't put in here was we wanted to research electrical infrastructure and what state laws there were. And our legal team was a key person at the table for that. And then I thought this cartoon was kind of funny. It reminds me of some of our customers. I thought it was legal. I wrote it on a legal pad. Another focus to that is to make sure that you're having a seat at the table when they're having discussions that might involve legal.
Also, we found that Chat GPT is being used more and more, and people really think that they're utilizing a resource that's adequate in what they're writing. And so we've had to outline what they could utilize that and how it could apply in certain processes. So maybe if that could be a part of it.
That's important for sure.
We often would have, when we were finalizing a contract and the final negotiations and that sort of thing after procurement was awarded, especially with IT, we'd have legal at the table with us when we were doing those things. And they all obviously had to thoroughly understand the solicitation and what we were contracting for before going into those meetings. But it was really, really helpful. And, we take really good notes and, run it by them, make sure. So you could you'd have your decision makers at the table when you're doing those negotiations, and the legal really helped with that.
Yeah, I'm noticing a theme of emphasis on making sure key personnel know what they need to know, including auditors or stakeholders.
Yep.
It's a good theme. So working with risk management, I showed an image of a risk heat map matrix here, and I've taken only one course on how to fill it out, but I'd love more information on it. So it's a newer concept for me, but this image shows the darker red, the more risky this function or whatever you're evaluating is going to be. And then you've got likelihood of occurrence and the severity. So if it's really likely and really severe, those are the things you really need to mitigate. So working with risk management on aligning the enterprise risk appetite, conducting supplier risk assessments, reviewing financial stability, cybersecurity, and operational resilience, monitoring ongoing supplier risk signals, and ensuring procurement decisions support the organization's broader risk strategy. So risk teams, if you have a team, risk team is currently myself, legal, and my finance manager. So we all wear that hat sometimes around here. We help procurement understand the broader risk landscape. Procurement provides the real-time supplier insights that risk teams rely on. So they need those nitty-gritty details to help understand the severity and likelihood of risk.
Sam, does your group have your own risk assessment request form?
No.
Okay.
No, we're pretty grassroots around here. The only forms that we have, I would say, are ones that I've done and adapted over time. So I'm always looking for more templates, and it's something that if you guys find, feel free to drop it in the chat if you have one, and we can always connect via email, or we can share that out via email to everyone.
Will do. Thanks.
Thanks. So supplier and contractual risk management is a little more specific. So we've got the pre-award due diligence, that's pretty standard in our process, the contractual protections, performance monitoring, scorecards, and documentation, and then contingency planning and exit strategies. Again, with those contingency planning and exit strategies and monitoring and documentation, it all has to be documented that you were considering these things during contract review, or you're likely to forget it if you go up for the contract renewal and not look at those things again. So this is a different form of a matrix, and it's more focused on the supplier risk. So you're looking again at risk likelihood, risk severity. It just breaks it down into 3 categories instead of that 4 or 5 we saw before. Supplier risk is dynamic. Strong contracts and ongoing monitoring are essential to protect the organization here. So we talked about what things auditors are often looking for, but let's cover what they often find and what we can do to mitigate those either before or after findings. So they often find missing or incomplete sourcing documentation, that the contracts weren't fully executed, maybe you didn't file the executed version properly, lack of competitive bidding justification. So justification language being documented is always super important. Inconsistent approval workflows. They want to see consistency from all across your processes. Poor supplier risk assessments, weak contract management, or performance tracking. So the poor supplier risk assessments, I think, really comes into play when procurement isn't able to stop our users and customers from bringing that into an evaluation discussion. So if it's not documented, that's something I really push to not have even brought up in an evaluation. So how can we fix this? How can we mitigate it? Documentation. Again, it's hard to remember the justifications and reasoning months and years later. We can also maintain contract repository. We can conduct periodic internal self-audits. I typically schedule these around every 6 months of the year, because that gives me enough time to forget enough about the procurement to go in with fresh eyes. We can strengthen training for procurement staff, and for any staff. We can standardize templates, use checklists. I know that was a couple of our favorite forms that were brought up in the introduction. And we can enforce approval workflows. So this enforcing of approval workflows really requires internal buy-in from every department that you're touching. So these findings are common across industries, and they're preventable with the right controls. And it's important to remember that prevention is always cheaper than remediation, and that small process improvements can eliminate major audit issues. So building stronger controls and improving your process. With building stronger controls, we can implement policy-aligned workflows in procurement technology. We can strengthen segregation of duties, unless you're a procurement team of 1. We can use risk-based sourcing strategies. We can establish contract governance frameworks, monitor compliance through dashboards and KPIs. We can improve our process by introducing periodic policy refreshers. So on an annual cycle or whatever rhythm best meets your needs in your agency. It's important to champion these process improvements and to position procurement as the strategic advisor, not a transactional function. And that ties into having a seat at the table with those discussions as early as possible. We can conduct supplier business reviews and facilitate those reviews. We can align procurement KPIs with organizational risk goals or DBE goals. We can encourage your team to set them if you don't have these already. That's one that I put in there specifically for my agency. And then tie that again to risk heat maps. We can automate those manual steps like what was lightly touched on at the end of June's Lunch and Learn. That was a really cool one to see. If you didn't, you should go check out the YouTube recording of it. We can reduce exceptions and one-off processes, again, for consistency that auditors are looking for. We can improve the cross-functional communication. So we want to build the stronger relationships with all stakeholders, engage with them early and often, and then document everything. And we want to drive the transparency and accountability. Again, procurement is a connector. Strong alignment ensures consistent controls and better decision-making across the organization. So our key takeaways. We've got procurement is central to risk management, compliance, and audit success. Strong collaboration with legal and risk enhances organizational resilience. And documentation and governance are essential for audit readiness. Proactive procurement leaders drive better outcomes and stronger goals. These are the pillars of a strong procurement function. They're also the foundation for audit success. So I'm going to prompt us for questions with a reminder that we're still being recorded here. So anything specifically related to the slides, I welcome those questions. Okay, let's transition away from the recording and talk about maybe some more specifics and current challenges that we're facing and any other topics that we want to discuss today.
Sam, I do want to make a comment. I saw on one of your slides, it talked about trying to remember what the strategy was or how you arrived at the procurement method. In my previous agency, couple agencies back, we had what we call the procurement contract. It's like the PCAM or the PAL, procurement activity list, actually. They call it a PAL. That was the acronym. And so it would literally, you start a memo for the file that starts from pre-planning all the way through contract award. And that covers, FTA loved that format because it really, like, you had to punch in and dates when certain activities came and when you issued the letter, it's got the date on there. So all you had to do was pull out the memo and go, this is when it happened. And then the backup goes in the file to that matches everything. So it is telling the story from start to finish. And it's a memo that you just kept updating till you closed it out.
It's almost like providing the framework for the whole rest of the packet or the rest of your digital folder.
Yep, exactly.
That's nice and easy. I like it. Ginny, I like your comment. Document, document, document. Yeah, I had to put that in there.
For sure.
Let's see. I'm going to sift through some of these as well. Having information in writing is really important to have a trail for audit purposes. Yes, Melissa. All right. Well, why don't we stop recording and then we can do more of our free form